Well, good morning again. Good to see you here today. We're actually kicked off a brand new message series last week called Adulting. So it's good to see so many people back this week. Maybe that's a good thing. Maybe it's not a good thing. We'll find out as we go along. But here's the definition we were working off last week. Adulting is making a bunch of small decisions every day that before you didn't even know people make, right? And it's kind of a thing, and that could be a thing that you face in your teens, maybe in your 20s, maybe in your 30s. I know people still in their 50s that are still figuring some of these things out. And so we're going to look at it. And I told you last week that the Bible doesn't have a specific thing about this transition of becoming an adult. There is no first adult and second adult. You're not going to find those books in the Bible. Though there is one called J-O-B, which is kind of part of that thing. It's not on that, actually, so it doesn't really work that way either. But today we're going to talk about finances. And the Bible says a whole lot about finances. In fact, the challenge today was what not to say, because there's just a bunch of stuff on there. A lot of it, specifically in the New Testament, talks about the idea of being weary of what money can do to us and this chasing after wealth and what to do when we get wealth. And if you're in that early stage of adult, I thought, that's probably not where you're at, right? You're probably in the stage of just simply making ends meet. In fact, I'm guessing if you all remember back, those of you that have been there before, remember back to the very first paycheck you got? And when you got your first paycheck, you asked two questions. Number one, where'd all my money go? Because you had in your mind, I'm making $5 an hour, and I've worked 10 hours this week. I'm going to make $50, right? And you got your check, and it was like for $32, and you thought, where'd my money go, right? And your second question, every person that gets their first check has the second question. The second question is, who in the world is FICA? Right? I mean, it's kind of one of those ad-holding things. People will know these stuff, and then you begin to figure out how much stuff costs and how much people take and the government takes and all the stuff that it goes for, and begin to hopefully appreciate that there's a value to all these things. But it's a real thing, and this whole idea of facing what life throws at us about finances can be a huge thing. In fact, the couples, I do premarital counseling before we marry anybody around here. Each of us does. And one of the things we talk about is finances. And we talk about figuring out how each of you sees finances. Because every couple, when you get them together, everybody sees finances, money, a different way. And it tends to be that one of them is the very financially conservative approach to money. They want to know everything that came in, and they want to know to the penny everything that goes out. And the other one is much on the other extreme, which is simply like money came in, I spent it, and life's good. And so we talk about money, what money means. And for some of us, money means security. For some of us, money means fun. Some of us, money means, just being able to get the things we want. But figuring out those things can be such a challenge and can impact so much of this whole idea of adulting. So today, before we jump into what we're going to look at today, I want you to reach in your back pocket or in your purse and find your wallet. No, really, find it for me, please. If you got more than $20 in it, wave it like you're proud for me, all right? I want to see how we're doing today. We got a couple, all right. Now you can put it away because I'm not going to say anything about giving today. I'm not going to ask you anything about your money. You've worked hard for that, so keep that $4.36 in your pocket, all right? But hey, before we jump in, I want to invite you to bow your heads and let's pray together, right? Lord, this is a touchy subject for all of us. And it isn't just when we're in our teens figuring out money, or even in our 20s, we begin to figure out what it looks like to live on our own or live with a spouse and how this all works out. It can be a thing for a lot of us for a long time. But I pray today that just for myself, you remind me again of this process. That life really is a journey. And it's not always about having everything figured out. Sometimes it's just about being willing to figure those things out. And to move ahead. And to keep faith in the process and to keep faith in you. and hopefully to get to a place where we feel better about our finances. Not just how much we make, but how we spend it, how we use it, and how we include you in that process. So we just ask you to use this time now to be soft and gentle as we need, or as firm as we need. In your name, amen. There are certain parts of being grown up that come easy to us, and some that don't. So let's do a little survey this morning. How many of you say the whole idea of finances, all that comes easy to you? Raise your hand nice and proud. All right. How many would say it doesn't come that easy to you? All right. Got a few more like that. So I want you to know as we start today, this is not about coming down hard on anybody. The reality is everybody in this room has a story to tell. Some of us are glad we're not up front telling our story today, because it's that kind of story, especially in finances and the mistakes that we make at times, the flubs and I should have bought this stock when it was this, or I should have got out of the stock market here about 2 weeks ago, right? And it's all this hindsight stuff. But again, as I said earlier, the Bible doesn't talk specifically about adulting and becoming an adult and how you do with money. But I think there's a great principle over in Romans chapter 5. And Paul is talking to them, and he's talking about how we are secure with God. And knowing that we're secure with God lets us go through this thing we call life with a different viewpoint and a different approach. And so here's what he writes there in verse 3. We also have joy, that is, we rejoice with our troubles, that is, through suffering and trials. And if you ever read this, you have to ask yourself the question, what in the world is he talking about? Who is ever joyful for trials and troubles? But he's writing about a principle here, and he's saying, listen, because we're secure with God, we can have joy with these sufferings and trials we have, because we know that these troubles, these suffering and trials, they produce patience. They produce endurance. That the stuff we go through can do something good for us if we make it through those things, if we don't die through that process. And patience, that is endurance, produces tested and proven character, and tested and proven character produces hope. Now, how many of you would say that you are more hopeful today about your finances simply because you've gone through this process of some trials and suffering with it, some flubs with it, some bad investments? You've thought credit cards were a great way to get a loan inexpensively, or a payday loan was a great way to get ahead, and soon discovered neither of those things, and it took you a while to get through those things, but through that you learned just to kind of stick with it and make it through, and what that produced is this idea of some character in you, and because you've developed that character, now you look at things a little bit differently, and because you look at things differently, you have some hope. And what I love of what Paul says about this hope, it says, and this hope will never disappoint us, that has put us to shame. Because this hope is something that's been developed in us. This isn't just that God's our hope, but God has walked us through this process and has given us hope through that process, that we say, I can face these things because I've learned some things along the road. And so I'm not going to be back into that situation. I'm not going to have shame on me. Because God has poured out his love to fill our hearts. And it's a reminder that God has put his love into our hearts, and he's poured it out because he knows we're going to need it to face the stuff that life throws at us. And finances is one of those areas. It's an area that couples fight over. It's an area where it never seems to have enough. And it's an area where if you get behind, it feels like you're never going to get a chance, not just to get ahead, but even to get back even. So, let's cut to the chase. I'm going to give you some principles today that are not based on anything in the Bible specifically, but here we go. Spending more than I make is not a, say that with me out loud. Spending more than I make is not a financial strategy. We need to know that. If you're kind of getting ready to adult, you need to know that. The financial strategy is so much bigger than just simply spending the money, right? There's so much, but sometimes we think, oh, it's just how do I go about doing stuff? I have money, I can spend money. Number 2, actions are greater than intentions. Right? I mean, think about it. Some of you in this room probably have some thank you cards that are sitting someplace around your apartment or your home that you were going to write after you graduated last summer, after you got married last fall. Maybe they're Christmas cards that you were going to send out last November and then December. And you had the intention, but the reality is, if that intention didn't move to any action, those people still don't have a thank you from you or a Christmas card from you. It isn't about how we intend to do stuff, it's about actually, that's part of kind of what adulting is. It's not just intending, it's actually doing stuff. Adult can be defined not simply as a stage of life, it's about the people that are adults are the people that do adult kinds of things, that make those small choices, those decisions that you didn't know that you were going to have to make. Ignoring money issues won't make them go away. Any of you ever tried that? You have your bill stack and you figure if I don't open them, everything is fine, right? And occasionally you get one that you can see is a red one and you think, that's an interesting color. But since I don't know, I can't be held accountable for anything I don't know. And the reality is ignoring money issues doesn't make them go away. In fact, it just kind of lets them get worse and worse. Number 2, bills don't get paid unless you pay them. Now, you may think that's a duh statement, Mike, but I know people who think that somehow it's going to get taken care of. They're not sure how, but it's going to get taken care of. Actions are greater than intentions. If you don't have money, I'm going to give you a little tip here. If you don't have money, you should not go window shopping. Because actions are greater than intentions. You say, I'm just going to look, I'm not going to buy anything. But then you see those vintage sunglasses. Or those boots that you've been looking at for so long. Or the latest Jordans, or whatever, LeBrons, whatever shoes are your thing. In that moment you think, we're going to practice a statement that will change your life. Everybody together. I don't. Because let's be honest. Let's be honest this morning. How many of you bought something this last week that you did not need? But it was a deal, right? I mean, it was on sale. Who knew it was going to be on, discount? It just seemed to be the right thing at the right time. You were having one of those days, and a way to fix one of those days is to spend more money. So one more time, and if you don't need that, that means you don't need to go window shopping. You don't need to go online at one of the discount sites to see what the deals of the day are. Simply walk away from the computer, all right? Number 3, my most important tool is my budget. And everybody said, because we're just like, because let's be honest, the majority of us aren't big fans of budget. I mean, the concept sounds like it makes sense, but to actually work a budget, that sounds just like drudgery and checking stuff and doing stuff and going through stuff. So let me take you back to a little bit of college. How many remember Maslow? Remember Maslow? This is Maslow's hierarchy of bills. And so if you're just beginning this adulting thing, let's go through the bottom is the most important stuff. And the most important things are these. That's right, food, rent, groceries, and prescriptions, right? Now you can live out of your car. You could. But it'd be nice to have a roof over your head, right? So rent, groceries you got to eat. You can't live without eating. And prescriptions, if you got some kind of stuff that you need to take, you got to get that covered. Those are the first things that ought to come out of your check are covering your rent, your groceries, and prescriptions. Line 2, the next things that come out. Credit cards, electricity, and water. Now you may be thinking to yourself, Mike, I understand electricity and water because I kind of need them. I mean, Caesar, I don't get this good looking without some electricity, baby. But you may be thinking, how in the world did credit cards meet that list? I mean, credit cards actually act towards the top on my list, right? Because if sometimes I just pay the minimal, and I'll get to it when I can get to it. But if you ever read the fine print on credit cards, that percentage rate is astronomical. Big word. And it will eat you alive. And if you have debts, and that's one of your debts, pay that one off first because it carries the biggest hit on your life. And if you're a person that lives at the, maxing out your credit cards, they're always just maxed out, you need to do what Debbie said earlier and pray. Find you a verse. Maybe go to Proverbs, because there's probably a verse in there that tells you that when you're a debtor, it's like being a slave to somebody. And it's true. It just kind of hangs over. The next most important things, student loans and insurance. Because if you're just starting out this whole adulting thing, you're probably young enough that you don't need a lot of insurance. Because you probably don't go to the doctor or dentist anyways. But your student loan is something that's going to hang around for decades, possibly. Forever, yeah. So getting that taken care of. The next line, cell phone, cable, and internet. And you were probably saying to yourself, Mike, I think that ought to go down like the first very line, right? Because I cannot make it without my phone. Well, my connection to the world, great wide world, right? But civilizations throughout time have survived without cell phones. In fact, there are some people in this room that are old enough, kids, that grew up without cell phones. Yeah, there might be somebody in here who didn't have a phone when they were getting around. Or cable. How many of you grew up where you had the rabbit ears? Any rabbit ear folks? Kids, if you don't know what those are, ask those old people that just raised their hands, right? It was a crazy way we got our television back then. It's in the air all around us. And you had these two little metal arms that you had to move in all different directions, trying to capture them. So, you take care of your rent, your groceries, your prescriptions first. You take care of your credit cards. The next most important things, student loans, cell phone. And if you have any money left, that's that little bitty triangle at the top. And you can knock yourself out there, all right? I made a little chart that's buying on a budget process, all right? We're going to walk through this pretty quick. You see something and you ask yourself the question, is it in the budget? And the answer is one of two things. Because this is extra stuff, all right? It's either no or it's maybe. Because we don't want to say no, right? So if it's a maybe, we ask ourselves the question, is it a deal, right? And if the answer is yes, the next question is it in the budget? To which we say no, we go back. But if we say maybe, we ask that important question, do I really want it or need it? If the answer is yes, am I willing to go without food for it? And if the answer is yes or no, we end up in that special bottom line, the bottom box on the left. To put it back, do not hit buy, and walk away, all right? Because let's be honest, the thing that throws our life so out of kilter are those unexpected expenditures, those momentary things. You know, it's been one of those days, so I'll stop by and get this, so I'll pick up that. You want to cook tonight? Who wants to cook any night, right? So let me take you through a quick step of how to budget. And if you haven't ever figured this out, let me just walk you through this real quickly. Number one, know exactly how much money I have coming in. That's the first and most important part of a budget. Not how much you're spending, but how much you have coming in. Number two, know what I'm spending my money on. If those two don't match up, the third question is very important. That's a budget, folks. How much I have coming in, how much I have going out, and if I have more going out than coming in, I need to know what am I spending money on that I don't really need. It's a very simple process, but it's an important process. Because nothing will mess things up more than hard-earned lessons. I'll share one of mine. I was in graduate school. I was making minimum wage. Lori was working at the university where we're at. She was making minimum wage probably. I was working probably 10 or 12 hours a week. I was going to school full time. And we were making ends meet. And then Christmas came. And my family's big on Christmas. Back then, everybody got a gift. We no longer do that. We put names in a hat and one person gets a gift now. But back then, everybody got a gift. And we were thousands of miles away from where our families were at, and so we decided, well, the best way to celebrate Christmas is we weren't going to be there, that our present would be there through our presents. So we bought everybody a gift. We put it on that's exactly right. Because that's what credit cards are for, right? To buy stuff before you have money, so that at some point when you have money, you can pay it back. Sounded good at the moment, but I can't tell you how many months it took us to pay it off, because we weren't making enough money to scramble back. But we had to figure out ways to cut stuff, to be tough, to get back over it, because for me, I'm the fiscally conservative one in our relationship. And I couldn't stand the idea of every month the bill kept getting bigger and bigger, and I kept thinking, but I'm paying the minimum. How does that work? Then I discovered why MasterCard and Visa, Discovery, and American Express are such big companies. Because they sell you their money and they make a lot of it back. And really the best reason to learn to be good with money is that not being good with money is so painful. And for those of you thinking about adulting, on the verge of adulting, you need to understand, in fact, I can guarantee everybody that's older than you would say this, that we have all felt the unsettling feeling that our life is wobbly and unmanageable, especially in this financial area. That there are times when we have struggled. Times now even that we struggle with things. And this is not a coming down on you and saying you need to be this or that. It's simply saying finances, and how you spend the money that you work so hard for, can impact your life so much that if you can figure this out, it can literally make your life better. And I'm convinced that Jesus wants your life better. He wants you to be better. And it's not you to be better so that you're better for everybody to say, oh, he's such a better person. But the idea of better, when you're better at life, life becomes better for you. When you don't have these debts hanging over your head. When you're living within your means. Now, I'm going to go to another verse just to wrap things up today. And it's a verse that talks to some of us that are a little bit farther along in adulting. Because again, when you're first starting out adulting, you normally don't have much money. Actually from Proverbs, and I love what he says here. Solomon's observation is simply this. It's a prayer to God. God, don't make me either rich or poor. Now that's a hard prayer for some of us in this room. We're glad to pray the second part. But that first part, we've all heard money doesn't buy happiness, but all of us would be the first person to prove that wrong, right? But God, don't make me rich or poor. Just give me enough food for each day. If I have too much, if I'm satisfied, I might reject it as deny you and say, who is the Lord? That Solomon says, observe these things. He says, I see people when they have a lot begin to say, hey, look at what I've done. They forget their need of God. If I'm poor, I might steal and disgrace, that is, profane the name of my God. And I don't want to do that either. I don't want to be put in that situation where I have to make some ethical shortcuts, or I have to do some stuff that I wouldn't normally do, but I have to do it because I don't have any food. I don't have any way to protect myself or my family. Just give me enough. I kind of wondered what that would look like for a lot of us. If we could learn to just simply be happy and content with enough. Not rich, not poor, but just in that enough category. Let me just say this stuff as we wrap up today. If you're starting off on this, or you are somewhere down the road in adulting, but you still struggle with this, I need you to know some things. First of all, you can figure this out. It is not rocket science, but it does require some effort on your part, but you can figure this out. And secondly, I want you to give yourself credit for the things you are doing. Because I have to imagine if we sat down and looked at your budget, looked at your life, that there are some good things you're actually doing in that. It's not, everything's not terrible. So give yourself the credit for the good things that are happening. And start with the small things that you can fix. Sometimes you sit and you look at your debt and you think, I have no idea where to begin. Dave Ramsey, who is leading this Financial Peace University seminar we have going on in the mornings, he talks about these ideas of little baby steps. Just as a child starts off with baby steps, right? Before they begin to run and to play and all that stuff, we need to start off with baby steps. Figure out the little things you can do and begin to take those steps. Don't worry about all the big stuff. Begin to work off those pieces. If you got $5,000 of credit card debt and a $200 debt over here, pay off the $200 debt just to get a feel like, I can actually do this. And then begin to work on the next thing. Lastly, accept that some things won't come easy. Because they won't. We can't predict the economy. We can't predict how your job's going to be. But we can predict is that God has set up this process for your life and for my life. And it's based on this, that knowing that we are His children, that He loves us, that He will never leave us alone, that He's going to be with us through this process, that we can face those, we can even have joy when we face those hard moments, because we know those hard moments will do something for us. They ultimately lead to character, which ultimately leads to hope. And that's my prayer for all of us today, is that we would stick with it, stick through it, and learn those sometimes hard and tough skills to get a handle on these things that so often has a handle on us. So I hope you join us next week. We're going to look at this whole idea of faith next week and making it personal. If you've grown up in a Christian home, and how do you take your parents' faith and make it your own? That's where we're going next week. So I hope you join us again then.